The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Chapter 1. The Change. One morning, Gregor Samsa woke up from troubled dreams and found himself transformed in his bed into a horrible giant insect. He was lying on his back, as hard as armor, and when he lifted his head a little, he saw his brown belly, divided into stiff sections. His many legs, pitifully thin compared to the rest of his body, waved helplessly before his eyes. What has happened to me? He thought. It wasn't a dream. Gregor was a traveling salesman. He looked at the window. The raindrops hitting the glass made him feel quite sad. He wanted to sleep a little longer and forget all this foolishness. But he was used to sleeping on his right side, and in his present state, he couldn't get into that position. No matter how hard he threw himself to the right, he always rolled back onto his back. He thought about his difficult job. Getting up early every day is exhausting, he whispered. He had to support his parents and sister because his father's business had failed years ago. If he didn't have to work to pay off his parents' debt, he would have quit long ago. Suddenly, he looked at the alarm clock. It was 6:30. He had missed the 5 o'clock train. Then, a knock came at the door. It was his mother. "Gregor," she called softly. "It's 7:15. Didn't you want to catch the train?" Gregor tried to answer, but his voice had changed. It was a painful squeaking sound. Yes, thank you, Mother, I'm getting up," he said, but the words were distorted. Soon, his father and sister Grieve began knocking too. They were worried. Then, the unthinkable happened. The chief clerk from his office arrived at the house to check why Gregor was late. With great effort, Gregor moved his heavy body and managed to turn the key in the lock using his jaws. When the door finally opened, and he stepped out, the office manager covered his mouth in horror. His mother collapsed, and his father began to weep. Gregor tried to explain, tried to ask for mercy, but no one could understand his animal sounds. His father grabbed a walking stick and a rolled-up newspaper, and, making loud noises, drove Gregor back into his room. Chapter 2. Life in the Shadows. For the first few days, Gregor stayed in his room. His sister Grieve was the only one who dared to enter. She brought him food, but he soon discovered he no longer liked fresh bread or milk. Instead, he preferred rotting vegetables, old cheese, and scraps of bones. Gregor spent his time hiding under the sofa, feeling ashamed. He listened through the door to his family's conversations. They talked about money, how little they had and how they all would have to find work. Gregor felt a deep sense of guilt. He had wanted to send Grieve to the conservatory to study the violin, but now, he was a burden. As weeks passed, Gregor's humanity began to fade, but his emotions remained. To give him more room to crawl on the walls and ceiling, which he enjoyed, Grieve and his mother decided to remove the furniture. When they took his desk and his favorite picture of a lady in furs, Gregor felt his past life being erased. In a moment of panic, he crawled out and clung to the picture on the wall. When his mother saw him, she fainted. His father returned home, now wearing a stiff blue bank messenger's uniform. Seeing Gregor out of his room, the father became furious. He filled his pockets with apples and began throwing them at Gregor. One apple hit Gregor's back and became stuck in his flesh, causing him terrible pain. Gregor escaped back to his room, bleeding and weak. Chapter 3. The End. The wound in Gregor's back took a month to heal, but it never fully did. The family became exhausted. They hired a cheap cleaning lady and took in 3 demanding boarders to make money. Gregor's room became a storage place for junk. He was covered in dust and threads. He felt forgotten. One evening, Grieve played her violin in the kitchen for the boarders. The music was beautiful. Gregor, drawn by the sound, crept out of his room. He felt that the music was the way back to his human soul. Was he an animal that music could move him so much, he wondered. But the boarders saw him. They were outraged and threatened to leave without paying. This was the breaking point for Grieve. "We must get rid of it," she cried to her father. "It is not Gregor anymore. If it were Gregor, he would have realized that humans cannot live with such a creature, and would have left on his own. Gregor, hearing this, slowly returned to his dark room. He felt no anger, only a deep love for his family, and a desire to disappear. He remained motionless until the early morning sun began to rise. Then, his head sank to the floor, and his last breath escaped him. When the cleaning lady found his dry, flat body the next morning, she announced his death with a laugh. The family felt a strange sense of relief. They decided to take a day off and go for a walk in the countryside. As they sat on the tram, they noticed how Grieve had grown into a beautiful young woman. They began to plan for her future, leaving the memory of Gregor behind in the shadows of the city.